This video has been sponsored by Squarespace. Okay, now I've got to confess, I'm really struggling to find parts for my crash-damaged Jaguar F-Type SVR. So you may remember from the last video where I introduced you to the new car, we had a good look around it and instantly put it up on the ramp at Nick's workshop in Birmingham to have a proper look at the car underneath. And upon doing this, we found bad news instantly. We had a snapped steering rack, and although I managed to find one to fit, it turned out it wasn't the right part. And that leaves me exactly where I am. I've been scrolling through the internet for days, all through eBay, all through individual websites, and I just can't find one there. And I've even been calling around every single breaker in the UK trying to find this specific steering rack. Until finally, after 3 days of looking, I got this call. Hello? Chris, we've got one. So now we can finally go back to Birmingham where the car is and fit it to the car. But after days and days of searching, I have finally found a steering rack with a matching part number, even though it has come off a 3-litre F-Type. But with the same part number, we've got to hope that it's going to work. So the car goes back up on the ramp, and hopefully this time we're going to have a bit more success. Like I said in the last video, this is a super easy steering rack to remove. There's just 4 bolts that hold it on, which are really accessible, and obviously the tie rods and the steering rack knuckle. Once these were all loose, we then tried to take off the track rod ends from the hub, but we still had the same problem. Because we can't get the wheel off, because we can't get the locking wheel nut off, we had to try and do this without removing the wheel, which wasn't easy.
It's that Bluetooth drive shaft and ball joint, that is.
And with that attempt absolutely failing, we did exactly as we did before and just removed the inner tie rods from the rack, remove the rack, and then we can deal with those track rod ends later. Then it was just popping out the electrical connectors onto the motor, and then also just taking out the bolts the rest of the way, and then the steering rack was free from the car for the second time over. So old steering rack is now off, and not only is the part number the same, the JX53 3200DB, it's got the same cast number, and everything else seems to match up. So I think we're off to a good start, Nick.
Yep, same.
Exactly the same?
Exactly the same.
Jeez.
You pull through with your 3-litre.
I know, yeah, 3-litre rack. Nice. And it actually looks in better condition.
Yeah, because it's not in half.
It may be the case as well that this one needs programming to the car because we're not swapping the motor over, but I'm pretty confident this time it's going to work. In most scenarios, I'd be perfectly confident, but the amount of varying part numbers there are for steering racks on these cars is ridiculous, so I just had the feeling that the fact this was a 3-litre one, there was going to be something different about it. But luckily this time it did bolt up, which is a good start, whereas the last one didn't. The next thing we have to check is if it's actually going to work on the car. As I already said, it took me days to find this rack, and I actually managed to find it by ringing up a company called Eurojag, and they had one on the shelf that matched the part number for my old one, and they only charged me £600 plus postage and packaging for it, which in the grand scheme of things, considering Jaguar wanted £3,000 for a new rack, I don't think it's too bad. Right, steering rack is now on. The question is it going to work just from plugging it in, or are we going to have to try and code it to the car or do some funny business? But there's only one way to find out. Okay, what we got? I mean, it seems to be working. I think that's okay. Nick! I can't see anything else that says it's not working.
Well, I think your tracking's out though.
That's the least of my worries.
Pointing that way, I'm doing this.
Now obviously because we'd still got the old tie rods connected to the hubs, we couldn't check whether the steering rack was actually working in terms of the power steering properly because they weren't connected, so we had to get these wheels off. So I managed to call out a local locking wheel nut removal guy, and he got it off in no time. So now I can finally take the wheel off the car, and that gives me the space then to remove the old track rod ends from the car once I'd removed the brake calipers first. The reason why we have to take the caliper off is the space from the track rod end bolt to the caliper is next to none, so to get any proper access to it, that's what we've got to do. So once those 2 bolts are removed, the caliper was then free and we could hang that out of the way, and then we could work together to get this track rod end out and put the new one in place. And then it was wheel back on, and then to check if the rack was actually functioning with both wheels and turn the steering wheel in the right place, which thankfully it did. So there's the steering rack back on the car, and I've got the wheels back on too. I've took off the front splitter just because we're going to have to get it trailered back to Leicester now, so that means I'm not going to scuff up the only bit of the car that's actually okay. So next clip, we'll be back home. And there we have it. The car is now back home, and where we're going to be doing the majority of the work to it at least anyway. So hopefully we can get most of it done in here. But we have a lot of work to do from here, and it's pretty daunting, I can't lie. It's now back with me, and it's solely down to me now to get all of this sorted out. So I think the first thing we need to do is establish exactly the parts that we need. Now, one of the things I want to do with this build is be a little bit more careful whilst I'm working on the car. So I'm going to take a few measures along the way to protect the car, to make sure that I don't have to spend any extra money from a slip up from my own mistake. And the first part of that process is actually just getting the car clean, because it's been sat for God knows how long. So it's about time it earned itself a little bath before we pull it inside for the long haul and really get to working on the car. Now, you may or may not know what I do for a living is detailing cars, so doing exactly this, and it's something that I just wouldn't have been able to do as a business without a website. And for you, whether this is starting up a sideline business, a new business, or even improving one that you already have, Squarespace has got you covered. Squarespace is the all-in-one online tool to help you build, run, and manage your own website. Using pre-made templates, you can make websites to a professional standard at a fraction of the cost. And the great thing is, this leaves you in control of your own website too, meaning you can make any slight adjustments as and when you want to make them without additional charges. And Squarespace can even help you make it mobile friendly. And not only that, they can help you with search engine optimization, e-commerce, online marketing tools, and even analytics. So if you want to level up your business, start selling products, or just get yourself found on the internet, make sure to go onto Squarespace with my link in the description, or discount code ChrisSlix, and that's going to save you a nice chunk of cash off your first website or domain. But for now, thank you so much, Squarespace, for sponsoring this video. Let's get to work on this Jag. One thing that I didn't realise when I bought this car is how rare it actually is, because I believe only about 400 units came to the UK. And that's the reason why I want to be a bit more honest and transparent with you guys and share some of the realities of rebuilding a car like this. So this is going to be our new best friend for finding parts for this Jag. This is now the bonnet of impending financial doom. And because this bonnet is ruined, we can use this now as a whiteboard to keep track of all the parts that I'm going to need to rebuild the car. And it's not going to be easy because there's not loads of information on the internet about the SVR model and about the part numbers, so I don't know, say for example, if the bumper off another model is going to fit. So I'm going to have to strip the car apart, make a note of the part number if it's on that part, on here, and then try my best to try and find it somewhere. So the first thing that we're going to need is a new bonnet, because this one is crumpled. Now luckily the vents are savable, so I just need the bonnet itself. And some of you mentioned in the last video that any bonnet off an all-wheel drive car will fit the car and these vents in the right place. So all I need to do is make a note of the part number and go and find one of them. And that is the only stamping on the bonnet I can find. So I've made a note of that, but I think that is going to be the easiest part number to find. To find the rest, I'm going to have to start stripping it apart. And there's no more ideal place to start that process than at the front. So I officially start work on the Jag by removing the front bumper, and this was actually really easy because half of it was hanging off. So there was just a bunch of 10mm on the top holding it in place, and then one in the passenger wheel arch liner, and I could get it off the car, and then there was just a wiring loom to disconnect, and we were good to go. And that's about the easiest front bumper I've ever removed. Well, I suppose it's only half a bumper though. Now this bumper has a front skin, which is the painted bit, and then the rear kind of reinforcement, which is this bit here, and I'm definitely going to need that because there's not much left. So let's make a note of this part number. Then we've got the grille on the driver's side, which I'm going to need, but I haven't obviously got that because it's, well, disintegrated. So I'm going to make a note of the part number off the passenger side and hope this comes as one piece. I think now you're starting to get the idea, so I'm going to check back with you once I've got all of the part numbers that I need off the front bumper. So I think that is everything I need for the front bumper. There may well be the odd extra little bit, but we'll find that when we come to it, but that's kind of the majority that I need. That's quite a lot really. I think what I've also learned about the part numbers is that anything that begins with HX is SVR specific, so they're going to be the really difficult parts to find. Luckily, the only thing off the front bumper so far, which is HX, is the driver's side grille with the parking sensor in it. So that's, I can't imagine that being an arm and a leg. You know, it can only be a few £100 tops, so that's not too bad. The SVR front bumper, I can't find a part number on the bumper, probably because the section with the part number on is completely obliterated, but yeah, so that's definitely SVR specific as well. But everything else is either EX, GX or JX, so hopefully those bits are a little bit easier to find. Now the thing that makes this car slightly more challenging than just a normal F-Type SVR, if there's such a thing, is that this is a facelift one. So After 2018 until 2020, they did the facelift where they fitted these LED lights, which look quite a lot nicer to be fair, and a lot more modern. But that does mean that this production run of this car with this shape headlight was only 2 years. So there could be some small changes and things like that I'm not aware of, which could make it even more of a nightmare, as if this car wasn't hard enough already. So this, I think, is gonna need replacing too, because there's not really much left to bolt it onto the car, so it's not even really repairable. So unfortunately, this is now a spares or repairs light. So if there is anyone out there that does need one for spares and repairs, you know where to get at me. But let's get the part number off this, and then we can guess roughly what it's going to be off the driver's side, off this part number, and we can add that to the list. If I'm being honest, it's a little bit scary how quick this list is growing, because I've only just started scratching the surface. So this is the passenger side, and this airbox support bracket is completely gone on the driver's side. So what I'm going to have to do again is try and use this part number here to find the one for the opposite side. Now on the SVR only, there is a kind of 2-layer wing. The first layer is plastic and then the second layer is metal, and these are both again specific to the SVR. So I need the number for the outer wing and also the inner metal wing too. And with the fact that the plastic part is completely disintegrated, I have no reference point for the part number for the outer wing. Because the front part of the side skirt is completely gone, that makes taking off the inner part of the wing a breeze, and it comes off with just a few bolts of the door shut and just a few bolts underneath the bonnet. Now it would be so much easier if I could find an F-Type SVR that had rear end damage that I could take all the parts from, but unfortunately that's just simply not the case with this car. So the list keeps on growing, and I'm sure this is just going to be the start of it, because there's going to be so many little bits that I'm going to need in order to complete this build, and also probably some bits I forget. Now I'm not only going to just need the bonnet, I'm going to need new hinges as well, but I'm also going to need these. These kind of deploy when the airbags and everything go, when the car's been in a collision, and make the bonnet kind of pop up. I think it's to protect pedestrians, but yeah, they're definitely going to need replacing. Because without them, I can't close the bonnet. So I've got kind of the first quick fill-in of all the parts that I'm going to need on the bonnet of impending financial doom, and there is quite a lot here. Considering that's just kind of a first go over the car after I've stripped it back quickly, I think this could get expensive. That's why it's so important that we've got to try and save as much as we can that's on the car that's okay, and also fix as much as we can without doing any dodgy repairs. And that's why I need to try and save all of the areas of the car where the paintwork's alright, and you know, we can try and avoid having these areas repaired, because the costs can mass up so quickly on this car. Now this I spotted, which I don't really want to replace this whole mirror cap just for a slight scuff here, so I'm hoping this can polish out. And also on the paintwork down the side here, I'm not 100% sure what's happened, but maybe this is like brake fluid or something that's been wiped over the car, or I don't know particularly, but it doesn't look good and you can feel it. So again, I'm hoping I can polish this off. And this is my field of expertise, so if anyone can do it, it's gotta be me. And thankfully it's good news on both. The mirror is more or less there, just off one quick pass. I think one more should get that looking absolutely spot on, but I'm not too worried about that at the moment. And the same on the door, you can see so clearly where I've polished and where I haven't. That is thankfully the paint on the doors saved. Well, actually it's more than just the doors saved, because it goes onto the rear quarters and the door on the other side and the rear quarter on the other side. So if that didn't come off from polishing or wet sanding, that would have mean having the whole car pretty much painted, because I need the front end done, I need then the sides done, and I'd need the rear bumper done anyway. So you're pretty much doing a full respray by that point. So that's definitely saved a lot of money. Now, when it comes to the interior on this car, there is something which is going to make it challenging, and that's because of all the materials in this car, which are pretty individual to this car as well. Because it's got this really nice unique spec with the Alcantara and the blue stitching, I don't think I'm going to find that on just any F-Type. And the last thing I'd want to do is lose that, because it's one of the things which sold the car to me in the first place and made it stand out like a sore thumb and scream that I've got to buy this car. Here's my thinking. I'm hoping what I can do is use any old Jaguar F-Type dashboard, because I believe they're all the same. I'm not 100% sure. And then what I can do is transfer over the sections where the material is individual to this car. So say for example this part here, hopefully I can take that off and then put that on the new dashboard, or if I can't do that, maybe I can take it to a trimmers and they can remove that leather and stitching and put it on the new dashboard for me. I don't know if that's a bit of a long shot, but I feel like that's the best option to retain this really nice interior. But the reason why I'm sharing this information with you guys about the actual parts for the car is because with the Aston Martin or the TT, for example, there wasn't too many revisions, and it was quite simple finding the exact perfect parts, for the car with no stress or worries. But with this one, because of how rare they are, I think there was only like 400 UK cars that were made. Finding these parts is going to be difficult, and also deciphering what is an SVR specific part and what isn't going to be easy either. So I want to share that part of rebuilding the car with you too. So I'd like to welcome you to the back of house things. This is the part that you guys wouldn't normally get to see, because it's one thing just being able to ring up the dealer with a massive parts list and it arrive within a few days, but in the real world, this is what you'd probably be doing if you were rebuilding a car too. Now, there is a few parts which have been surprisingly easy to find, and I'm quite happy about that. So we found a facelift Jaguar F-Type SVR front bumper, and that's £349, which I don't think is too bad, but it is red, so we're gonna have to get it painted, but that's going in the basket. Unfortunately, the grille, there isn't a matching part number for sale, but I have found this pair of F-Type headlights for quite a reasonable £875, but it's collection only. I have rang the guy up and said I'm happy to cover the cost of postage and a little bit extra, which I think is completely fair, but he wants a bank transfer only and not to go through PayPal or eBay because there's too many scammers, which to me sounds a little bit suspect. So I don't know whether I'm going to go for that, because I'm all for saving money because that's a pretty good price, but I also don't want to get scammed. The airbox bracket I have managed to find, but there's two things. One, the part number is the same, apart from on here it begins with an E, and on my list it begins with a J. So that I probably need to double check just off the car to make sure that's right. But the other problem is this is in the US, so it's going to take forever to get here. And also there's going to be import costs and things like that, so I may be better off going to the dealer for this part. I've managed to find a airbox off a F-Type 5 litre, and it actually says in the description it's from an SVR, and the part numbers match what I've got, and it's on a starting bid of £100, so I think I'm just going to throw an offer on it and see what comes back. Now, this one's a little bit strange. This is the passenger inner metal part of the wing. There is none of those for sale, but there is plenty of outer plastic wings from this One Breakers, so it might be worth me calling those and seeing if they've got any, but there isn't any listed on eBay. It's only the plastic one, but I do need one of those, and it's only £100, so I think I'll get that ordered. There is a few single wheels kicking about, which is a good thing because I only need that one front one. The rest of them just need a refurb, so I'm not going to be buying a full replacement set. And the rears definitely seem to be cheaper than the fronts, even though they're wider. I don't know what that says about the car, but I think the one that I'm going to go for is, well, it's going to be this one here, £298. Let's get it in the basket. This part unfortunately is expensive, which is the whole corner of suspension with the drive shaft and all the arms and everything that I'm going to need to make sure that corner is completely okay with no worn bushings or damage to any parts, which I wasn't aware of, which I think is probably just the safest way to go. So £1,440. It's going in the basket. Now, with the bonnet, I'm struggling to make out whether this is the right one. I'm 90% sure it is because it's got the vents more towards the middle of the car, and you guys told me that all of the all-wheel drive ones fit the SVR. So I hope you're right, but it's not in perfect condition. It's black. It's got quite a few scratches, but we're going to have it painted anyway, so that's not the end of the world, but it's not particularly cheap either. It's £900, which is quite a lot of money, and also can't be posted, which means I'll have to drive to London and back to get it, which is like a 4+ hour round trip. So I'm going to leave that one in the watch list for now and come back to it later. Apologies if you guys aren't enjoying this bit, but I wanted to try something a little bit different and just share with you the full part of building a car and what it actually entails, rather than just the work on the car too, because it is really challenging, and I'm sure some of you guys appreciate there is a lot more to it than just bolting stuff onto a car. But for now, thank you so much for watching this video. If you've enjoyed it, please don't forget to hit a like down below, hit on that subscribe button while you're there if you're not already, and I'll catch you next time where we start fitting some of these parts to my Jag.